Hello and welcome to Stampscaping 101. We're going to go way back into the basics of scene stamping here. I know a lot of people like the compositional stamp sketch styles of videos, and I don't do enough of those. I really should. A lot of times I'm investigating technique and media surface combinations and so forth, kind of experiments and that. But one of the things that's really beneficial to do anytime you get a new set or just new stamps to use with your existing stamps, it's good to do these stamp sketch styles of exercises. You can do them on just some plain copy paper just to see how things blend together. Copy paper is not going to give you a really good kind of a connective, seamless style of look because you'll get a lot of edges, types of things where one stamp ends and the other begins. It's a little bit more distinct that way in a super absorbent style of paper than using, your typical, better papers like cardstocks like that. But something like, just a plain copy paper can give you the gist of something so you can get the basics of, how things can work together. Okay, that being said, I just have some quarter-page pieces of paper here, just simply because it'll go faster here, and that's your typical size, that people are stamping on these days. Some of these are kind of scraps right here. We have some things written on the back of these, but I don't know, the front side's perfectly good to use. I have 3 pieces of glossy and 4 pieces of matte, and I don't know, if we have time, I'll get through a vintage paper half-size piece of paper that I've been experimenting around with lately. It's really fun. Well, maybe we'll start off with this one. How about that? Okay, now the types of papers and surfaces that you're working on will dictate the types of media that you're using in conjunction with it. Some types of media don't work very well with the surfaces that you're using. So you have to find the right type of ink or medium in general to use with your surfaces, okay? Now, just in general, your matte cardstocks or something like that can pretty much take just about any ink that you throw at it. Now, what you color your compositions with after you stamp them out, that might come into play. Like, for example, if I use a VersaFine Clair on a cardstock like this, if you use something like an alcohol marker, it might put the oil-based pigment ink back into solution and smear it. You can try doing different things like heat setting to, test the compatibility and so forth. Most dye-based inks work fine on cardstocks. With some, you might have to heat set it though, because some are dye-based inks are thicker in viscosity than others. Okay, my dye-based ink of choice is going to be Marvy today, and I might use the actually, I think I'll use the VersaFine Clair on this piece of paper. Okay, that being said, let's get right into it. Okay, now where do you start with a scene? Oftentimes, but not always, okay, it's kind of the main image. And what I get by that is the main image is often, sometimes it's a large object like this. It's a lake, it's a river, it's a stream, trees, or a cabin or something like that, okay? Strong focal point types of images that kind of dictate the overall theme of a card. That's usually what you're going to stamp first. Okay, now it doesn't, a scene doesn't have to always be land. You can do all sky. It could be clouds and a Milky Way or something like that, with a few trees in the foreground. Who knows? Or just all sky. That's scenic too. Okay, but one of the things that you're doing, and this isn't, if you stamp something, there's no out of order, in scenic stamping. You can kind of do it anyway, but for things like structures or something, I typically stamp these types of things first and work my other types of imagery around it, okay? It's kind of going along with the kind of idea of, let's say we have a bunch of things to pack up in our car, and they're all of different sizes. Some things are suitcase size, some things are shoebox size, okay? Now, to really maximize that space, what you usually do is you usually put the large images in first, okay? and then you fill in with smaller images, okay? So I call these kind of, I don't know, foundation types of images. Is it going to be an ocean or something like that? A lake, a river, a cabin, a watermill? I would usually stamp those types of things first, and then I would work other images around them as filler stamps. So it's kind of foundation, filler, and then foreground. 3 F's, you might say. But that's not always the case, okay? There's many types of variations that you can do. Okay, on this one right here, where you stamp your main image will determine things like horizon lines, how much sky you might have. Okay, you want more sky, you stamp your surface imagery lower. You want more things like water in this case with this lake, then you stamp it higher. You can go portrait, or landscape on this. This one happens to be a pre-printed vintage paper that has this vignette on it. This is a half page, so, it went down here, but, it had dark corners on the top, all 4 corners. I cut mine in half, so I have my darker areas up top. So I like to have those darker areas there. That's not to say that you can't have kind of a darker lakeside area down here with a lighter sky. It's all up to you, okay? All right, so then this one right here, let's do a kind of off-center version of this, okay? Or actually, this one, let's put this right in the center. I'm going to use another stamp to go with this that I like. And these ones will be from Nature Set number 8. I'm just using the wood-mounted stamps like this. If I have wood-mounted versions of something, I usually don't open up another pack of it in, like the cling foam sets or something like that. I don't know, sometimes I do, but not always. Okay, so that's kind of my foundation stamp. Now I'm going to use some other images around it, okay? Now I could stamp this in, multiples, like 3 times, and that will carry that image out to the edge. You just kind of overlap it and do it 2 more times in this case. But let's create a little bit more depth on this, okay? So there's your foundation image. Now let's go, we're going to fill in around this image, okay? Now filler stamps, again, there's no, set formula to this, okay? Now on this right here, this is the part that people think is really hard. It's not a hard concept or hard application, but they have a hard time kind of overlapping things. It's a hard notion to get over because everyone's kind of used to doing very careful placements of things because they're using outline images as opposed to tonal images like Stampscapes stamps are. So with tonal images, okay, large stamps, I'm going to apply a little bit more pressure. Okay, you overlap things. Now you don't overlap it by 4 inches or something like that, but you come in here, and I'd say, about, I don't know, an 1/8 inch to a 1/4 inch, or something like that. Even a 1/2 inch, okay? You can go like that. So that being said, when I say you don't be so careful about it, well, you can be careful about it, but you're not so specific about it, I guess you can say. There's plenty of leeway. When it comes to overlapping, you don't have to be exact, okay? Just don't be, with all of your different images, don't try to put it together like a jigsaw puzzle, like edge to edge. When that happens, a lot of people have a lot of gaps in between images, and that's the way it's supposed to be. A little area over here, if I want to fill in with that, I can put this in right here. And see, I'm overlapping it, I don't know, 1/2 inch or something like that, okay? Again, you don't want to overlap it by, 5 inches or something like that. But here's my filler stamps. It's almost not a filler stamp because these are kind of main images too. I mean, I could have stamped those first and this one after, but it's easier to find, to figure out how much space is in here. Stamping that one first, okay, because this one goes up to right here, and this one is like over a little bit too much. I might stamp that one in the middle and have a big gap, okay? Now I can fill in, with a little bit of rock right here and stamp it again in here. But you can see what I mean. Just kind of putting in our main image first like that. it's easy to work our other images around it like so. Okay. All right, now filler images could be anything. There's water textures that I can put down here if I want to. I don't think I'm going to use the water texture in this one because this vintage paper is already very texturized in here, okay? But let's go with some additional imagery in the background. Now, I haven't used a lot of Clair types of inks before, you know, this pigment ink. So I don't have a super good feel of it in terms of what I'm going to do next, okay? And that's getting an impression down pretty good, okay? I've stamped it out pretty firmly because my Clair pad is also really juicy, and I'm going to wipe some of this off like this, okay? Now watch this for filler images too. I went from side to side, but you can also do something that's representative of something going back in the distance. It could be a mountain, if you want to. That could be a filler image. Filler images could be just additional trees like this. Now, I've stamped it out once, okay, and I've kind of wiped it off down here. But let's put some trees in the background, okay? And let's see if we can give it additional depth. Maybe I took off too much ink, but, you know, so that those trees in there. Now see, if I stamped it really dark, it would just go right down in here and you wouldn't be able to see the silhouette of these ones. So that's why I went pretty light with it. But let's do that again, okay? Let's take that, stamp it out. Don't let this part confuse you in terms of, oh wait, you know, I'm supposed to wipe that off right now or what? You know, you can do one layer of images or whatever, okay? There, just think about that first, okay? Let's go with this one again. Okay. I think that looks pretty good because this is kind of vintage, so it's a little bit faded off in the distance like that. Okay. And we'll go over here, about like so. Okay. So you have your distant images like that. With this vintage paper, you already have your tone and kind of lighting scheme already established because of the, you know, the pre-printed, in this case, what turns into a background, you know. It's not, you know, when they print this up, it's not background, you know, it's just paper, you know, it's texturized tonal paper. Okay, so that is in the background. Now, okay, filler stamps. Trees off to the side, trees in the background. You know, it could have been a moon or whatever you wanted, okay? Now let's stamp some foreground, okay? Foundation, filler, foreground. I could just put, you know, a few more trees in here, but I don't think I'm going to go with trees. But it's a good idea to do some trees sometimes in the foreground because it kind of puts you on the near shore with similar types of textures and forms like that. But I don't have too much space down here. So I'm going to go, you know, this would be a good spot to just use some like reeds here, some grass in the foreground. But let's make things a little bit more interesting with, like, say, another rock form like this. Now, I don't have a lot of space here, so I'm just using just a little portion of this, top of this ledge stamp, okay? So it kind of puts that granite style of foreground rock in here, okay? It gives us something as a viewer to stand or sit on, okay? So from an emotional perspective, you can say, it's really comfortable because we have something solid as a viewer to stand on. When you look at things like this, or when we're stamping it, we're kind of subconsciously entering the scene. You know, when someone looks at something like this, you're kind of entering the picture in some ways. It's like the same thing, like when we're watching movies or something like that. You're kind of subconsciously engaging, you know, in things. So things like that kind of help out the scene a little bit, okay? All right, so there's some foreground right there. And tell you what, let's, I happen to have this. I didn't pre-plan any of these scenes that I'll be doing. I'm just kind of, I needed to really clean off my desk, and I thought, I'm going to do a composition thing before I put all these stamps away. Okay, so anyways, here's a little canoeist right in here. And we can call this scene, pretty much done. It's a, half-page scene. It's pretty big. There's other things you can put in here. Maybe some stars or something like that if it's a, nighttime type of thing. Now, personally, I would take a colored pencil and add in some shadows just to kind of round out the lighting scheme of this scene. This is all light down here, but that's, before I stamped any of these large trees or something like that. I can just take a colored pencil and kind of run it down here and to add some additional shading in here to anchor the scenes in here, or the objects in here. Okay, so that is foundation, filler, and then foreground in here. That's like subject matter. You can call that another F, like focal point, okay? Your eye really goes right to that canvas like that. Oftentimes, though, see, I save those little types of elements for the end. So in a way, it kind of went big, smaller, that ledge stamp is big, but I used a very small portion of it. And then the smallest element was like that. It's easier to fit kind of a smaller object in an area than, stamping out these little ones and stamping the big things around it. You have to be worried that you're going to stamp it on top of your little character or something like that. Does that make sense? Okay, so let's go on to our next card here. Let's go with this matte paper. It's really called silk weight. It has a slight coating on it. I like that. I find it to be a little bit smoother than just a matte paper, and I find it more interesting in terms of its retention of ink on surface, although ink does absorb into the surface because it's not super coated. Okay, so I've totally lost. Oh, here's my VersaFine Clair. Top right that. Let's switch over to the Marvy dye-based ink, okay? All right. Let me just grab something here. Let's start off with a snowy creek. I was thinking, we're approaching winter here. Why don't we do something from a snowy set? This one is called Snowy Brook, I think? I don't know. I've forgotten these names here. Okay. The names of all the stamps are in the description section below this video if you're watching it on YouTube. Okay, you just click Show More, and it expands that section. Okay, so this is a fairly large stamp right here. It's a little, I don't know if you can tell on the rubber, but I don't think you can, but let's stamp this out. It's a little, kind of winter brook. And let's stamp this about like so. Now, what I'll do is I think I'll use a cabin or something like that on top of there. Maybe I'll do it two ways. Maybe I'll just make one kind of nature and one kind of with a structure. I don't know. Or we can just go for different, different scenarios too. Okay, a little bit of a creek running through here like that. Okay, now a foundation stamp doesn't have to be in one stamp, okay? It's the river or something like that. It might be a river and something else, like a cabin or something like that. That would work perfectly in there with this one. Let's do, okay, I just used Nature Set number 10 for a different scene. Let's use that same country chapel, I think, for this one. Okay. Hopefully I've left room. Yeah, I left enough room in here. Okay. Now, if this was a daytime scene or whatever, we could color our trees green or, variations of green or whatnot to get a little bit of color variety in here. But I'm keeping this really simple and quick. So we're doing most of our compositions. I might do some sky imagery in a different color. I don't know. But let's just get these established like that. Okay. So a chapel right here and a creek right here. Let's do... This scene could get balanced out a little bit more. Let's go with... Actually... Let's go with the I was going to use these trees right here from this side of the chapel, just over here, which you can do, okay, if you don't have the trees, but I think let's go for a little bit more of a stronger application of some trees in here, okay? So let's go with these ones right here. This is just called the tree cluster. Okay, and we'll put this over here. You can call this tree cluster kind of a filler stamp too. Okay, we'll go like this. So I have some trees over here. And I tell you what, this is what I've been teaching in a couple recent scenes. I've gone over this numerous times in other videos, but if you've just kind of tuned into the channel and haven't had a chance to watch the other 1,000 videos, literally, you can just kind of mask off with a paper towel. Use the rip side to give you kind of a more of a uneven, kind of softer kind of transition rather than something hard. But so you can kind of fill this in with some additional trees in the distance like that, but just a smaller version of it, just by using the tops of your stamps. My designs have been specifically designed to be used in partials, okay? So you can use them in their entirety, but you can also stamp your images in parts, okay? Partials to give you more bang for your buck, okay? A lot of stamps you can't do that, like an outline style of design. If you can't have this non-continuous line, it looks strange, but when you work designs tonally, like all these dots and things like that, and you try to get rid of all lines in your drawings, what happens is you can use them in partials and it doesn't look out of place, okay? Now this is a snow texture. For grass texture, I have grass textures, but this one's a snowy one. I'm going to wipe this off a little bit up top here, all right? So I can just use that texture, and I'm going to fill in these areas in here. So see, this is a filler stamp. It's a filler texture stamp, okay? See that where it went in here? Let's ink this up again. Filler stamps can be textures, they can be objects. Some of the most universally applicable stamps are texture stamps. So I don't know if you can see this. This is all the snow texture in there. But see how that really kind of it unifies the 1, 2, 3, 4 impressions in here so far. Okay. And I can go for another one down here. I don't think I need to. I'll save this area down here for some foreground imagery, okay? Which we'll do next. All right. And, well, let's do this right here. I have a little bit of this little snowy twig type of thing. Okay. I'll show you a little trick here too. Do you see these little lines, defining lines in my snow like that? See that? How it trickles off like that? I'll show you how to utilize those using textures, okay? Or objects, like little bushes or something like that. What you do is you mask off those little lines like that, and then you can add these twigs or something like that coming out of it. So now these twigs are in the snow. You don't have to use the whole thing like that, which is more indicative of seeing the base of it, but to use certain portions of it, like this, okay? And that really looks like snow. Or it's in the snow, it's deep in the snow, right? So you just use a small portion of it, and so now suddenly it's in something. All right, now I'll leave a little bit of area out here for some additional foreground, which we'll get to right now. Okay. So do you see where that, the filler is in there? And now we're doing the foreground. All right. Let's go with the leafless tree right here. Something kind of tall maybe in the foreground. Okay, here. This is the leafless pine stamp. Foreground, I like usually usually something fairly spindly so that we get the benefit of having something close, to create depth, but it's also kind of, prickly and see-through so you don't kind of obscure what's going on in the background. Okay. Maybe one more on the side just to kind of balance out the composition. Okay. All right, so kind of main imagery in terms of the snowy brook right here and the chapel. And then we've filled in with texture down here, some additional trees, and there was the winter brush down here, and then the foreground in the trees like here, right down here. Okay. Okay, so that is the second composition. Let's get to a third one. Let's use a set. Some people have picked up this one recently. It's the nature set number 21, is it? The Bayou? Okay. All right, now this one, I don't have the printed form that comes in here, but there's some hanging limbs in here with some Spanish moss. There's cypress clusters in here, 2 different sizes. The Bayou house, kind of this bird in the water. Cypress knees, they call them. Here's a boating fisherman. And the cypress tree right here. Okay, now what is the main image in this? This is bigger than this, right? This is about the same size as that. This could be a main focal point. This can be a main focal point. If we're going to do this one, though, that house, with those open windows like that, I see that as the main image in a scenario that has that image in there, okay? Now, it doesn't mean that if you picked one of the other ones, that's wrong, okay? It's just, I find that this is probably going to be the main kind of visual focal point of a scene. If you have a house in there, okay? Now, if you have someone, like, standing in the water in like a canoe or something like that, then, people tend to look at people or something like that, okay? Let's do this on the glossy. Not for any particular reason. It could be on anything. Okay. All right. So we'll stamp this one out. Again, if you want more water, stamp it higher. If you want, more sky, stamp it lower. Let's go with, it's a little bit higher than center, okay? Something like that. Okay. I think I need to re-ink my pad here with a little bit of black ink. Okay. I like to keep my pads, dye-based ink ones, kind of medium wetness. Okay, I don't like them too wet. If they're wet, they stamp out really dark, which is good. But sometimes when the impressions are really juicy, it just, I have to heat set or something like that. Oh, let's see, I don't need to reveal my tack and peel here because this is the clinging foam set. Okay, now these are pretty big here, so I'm going with these large foreground trees first, okay? I could go with the backgrounds, but these are fairly large, so I'm going to do them right now. I could do filler around that too, but this is almost kind of, these are so large, they're kind of a foundational image within a composition that has them in there, okay? Now, I'm going to use these ones where they're kind of stamping off the top of the... Oh, that's really juicy right there. I think I inked up too much. That's okay. All right. And when I have a lot of ink on this, what I do is sometimes I drag, like that, so it doesn't build up dots of ink, okay? Wow, that's really dark. And this one right here, I will stamp this one out to the side like so. I always have this going into the water lower than the base of my distant objects, okay? Things that are lower in the composition represent things that are closer to us. There's a better impression right there. not so juicy. Okay. That is the cypress right there. Now we need filler images, right? Can you see that? It's because this area out here is not filled in. I mean, it could be just open water or something like that, but if we want to kind of create a little bit of a denser type of ecosystem here, let's go with another image to put on the side right here. This is the smaller cypress cluster that I can stamp right in here. Okay. I build up like that, then I do a little bit of a drag. Okay. Now one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to wipe this off a little bit because that image right there didn't stamp out too dark. So I'm going to take off some ink off of this, okay? I'm not trying to remove completely, I'm just kind of removing some of it, just so that it doesn't stamp out one uniform value of black and super dark, you know, in the distance there, okay? But if you do, so be it. It's not, you know, going to ruin anything if it's darker in the background, okay? All right, so see, that's an image right there. Now, I tell you what, let's go for a second impression. I'll put it right over here. Let's mask off this tree a little bit. Masking is always very minimal with, I don't know, 99% of the stamping that you're doing with Stampscape stamps. Oops, I stamped right through my paper towel here was wet. Okay, so I got a little bit of imagery right in here. But I'm going to show you something, though, with that. Just like my trees on this one, where they're going back into the distance with lighter value impressions, we'll take this, we'll blot it off like so, okay? I'm going to wipe off the bottom portion. I don't really want the bottom portion of this stamping out. I'm not going to bother taking off, you know, 100%, you know, with a wet paper towel, but let's take this now, and let's stamp this higher up like this, okay? And into that texture form in the distance. You see where that's really kind of a distant looking impression. Let me get a new paper towel here, or here's one. Let's mask off our house there, and we'll go for an even lighter impression. Higher up. Okay, but see how this is really filling in my area in the distance like that. With lighter forms. Do I dare try for another impression over here with the same inking? Let's go for it. Let's see if it stamps out. When you're using lighter valued impressions within a given space, what you're doing is you're creating kind of a lighting scheme by saying that those objects in the distance, you know, have light bouncing off them, and, you know, it's coming back to our eye, and it's getting broken up in things like, you know, suspended moisture in the air or something like that. So objects in the distance, in other words, they're usually lighter than the objects in the foreground, okay? But you see where that is like that? So you can see where you can really fill in your imagery like that. But don't just go black, 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 black. Go black, gray, lighter, or something like that. So you'll get a feel for it, and you'll get a feel for how, you know, many impressions you can get using your existing ink. Okay, so filler. Foundation, filler, okay, and then foreground, okay. So let's just add this bird. This bird's kind of a good focal point in here. A lot of times now, I save my foreground after I do my toning and things like that. But just for the sake of this video and kind of demonstrating compositional building, let's just do it all. You know, let's create the entire scene here, just in black and white, just so you can see how it comes together, okay? Here's a cypress knee stamp. Okay. I'll tell you what, I'm going to wipe off the base of this a little bit, and the shadows. I like kind of a transitioning shadow going from darker to lighter as it moves away from our object that's casting the shadow. Okay, see how that just really kind of dissipates down like that? Okay, you can put the knee in, you know, front of the bird and back of the bird, wherever you want it to go. Just for kicks, let's use the lighter version, the smaller version as well. This one. I blotted it off first. Let's go for kind of a light version of it. I don't want it too light because it's not too distant. It's still foreground. All right. And I don't know if we want to go crazy. There's, the swamp is teeming with life and whatnot. So let's stamp out our lilies right in here. Put some distance in the foreground. Plenty of environment for our crawdads in there. Or something like that. I don't know. We had a lake at this local park growing up, and when we discovered those crayfish in there, we caught some and took some home, and I had an aquarium, and I put them in the aquarium, but we went through a couple generations of crayfish because they had, laid eggs. We had baby crayfish, and then we gave a lot of those away, and, there was like other people, families that had, generations of crayfish. I don't know about generation, maybe one generation. I'm not sure if the babies ended up, having babies. Okay, so these are the Spanish moss. I just have it kind of creeping in from the top like that. If you had a warm, sunsetty, orangish glow in there, it'd be more of kind of a romantic setting notion of this location in here. We could stamp instead of the bird, kind of the creature of the Black Lagoon. Suddenly this becomes like a good Halloween scene, and I would do it in grays and kind of darker, kind of a, ominous look to it or whatever. So you can, give this whatever type of kind of emotional quality that you want to it just from the colors that you use, okay? So foundation, filler, okay, and then foreground. These objects right in here. There's texture down here too. It's not all foreground is like, okay, those are the things that are like absolute closest to us or something like that. They could be. But like I said, you can use this kind of structuring in terms of your process, with a asterisk next to it, because there's always variations to it. If I did that scene again, who knows? Maybe it would look, I would stamp it out differently or with a different, kind of progression. Especially, if I was doing a card and it was for video's sake and, I wanted some different colors within those trees and the, the house, etc. I might approach it differently by coloring certain objects inherently in the design itself. So in other words, if I want that cabin to be brown, maybe I would stamp it out in a dark brown or something like that, instead of just doing everything in black too. Okay, so this is the Seaside Cove stamp. Maybe we'll do some sort of lighthouse type of situation, okay? All right, let's see. Let's go on the matte paper right here, okay? And this is a big stamp right here. That's certainly a good, thing for a foundation right here, okay? Let's see. Let's do it with the lighthouse though, okay? So the lighthouse is also kind of a really main focal point, all right? So either one of these can go first. Would you go with the kind of the more the focal point-ish type of thing, a strong visual, or would you go with the foundation? Either one, okay? But I'll show you how to work around either one, okay? Now, here's my lighthouse. I'm going to have that ocean kind of merging in here. So what I'm going to do, like I did with the other ones in some areas, if you know where some object is going to merge in with another object, what you do is you just kind of, let me see, it'd be on this side. You just kind of wipe it off in that area, or you dab off, okay? You don't remove 100% of the ink, but you just dab some of it off, okay? And let's go with this one right about like so. Okay. And let's stamp the Seaside Cove Small around it. Now, as big as this image is, it is, yes, it's filling around the lighthouse, but it is kind of more of a foundation type of thing. We stamp out anything this large, you know, chances are we're going to be working stuff around this one, okay? So, stamping it out, inking it up. Now, we're going to use a smaller portion, you know, because the stamp is longer than this length anyway, okay? But let's see where this is going to go in here. Okay, stamp this about right up like so. I think I'm going to mask off a pretty good portion of this area in here, okay? This is your mask, or this is your mask duties right here, okay? Now, people that always say, hey, you make it so easy. It's because I use easier. If it looks like it's so easy, okay? Or unusually easy. It's because I use much easier systems, okay? Than what someone might be using. I don't see this as easy. I just see it as, you know, what's needed here. I don't think anything else is needed. And it's because, again, we want our stamps to be merging with one another. So if I do get some overlapping with some sort of masking job that I've done, then all the better, okay? Now, if I don't do a good job with masking and I get a bunch of big spaces in between my designs after I stamp them out, no big deal, because we're going to be running in colors in here anyway. This is just the kind of the foundation piece, and nothing right now is so important in terms of a finished process, okay? We have a lot of things to do and a lot of things we can do still to blend everything in. This just kind of gives us a rough kind of a foundation. Now, so far, you know, things have really blended in well. I've overlapped things. I haven't done, you know, any careful masking at all. I wouldn't call this careful masking either. But where that paper towel is, I do give it a little bit of extra pressure. As thin as the paper towel is, it is still a little bit of a ridge. Okay. So let's see how we did. Not too bad, okay? So see, here's my mask right there. And that masked off this portion right here. Now the reason why I did mask this off, because I didn't want that line to be running through my lighthouse, and there's some textures down here. It would be running through my crashing waves, okay? All right. So that is that. Now, there's my foundation. Let's work some filler stamps. And speaking of masking, let's do a little bit more masking, okay? Well, I do masking around objects such as structures, you know, that have, you know, straight lines in them and whatnot. We'll have to do it around, you know, that horizon up there. Okay, but I'll show you the horizon line. It's going to be super easy to do. Let's do just a light blue here, okay? A lot of times with lighthouses, I like making them during the nighttime, you know, a nighttime scenario with a beam of light coming out there. Let's just do it in the daytime right here. All right, now my cloud stamp. I'm going to stamp this down here, but I'm going to make it look as though light is coming from kind of within a space in the clouds. Okay, I'll show you how to work this. Now, I have videos. I wouldn't be surprised. 50 videos where I've used the stamp, but there's also one specifically out there designed to show 018 cloud cumulus and how to use it, okay? All right, so here's our mask for our lighthouse. Now, I'm stamping this in a very light blue, okay? So I'm not, you know, worried about going into my lighthouse stamp much. I don't want to get a big, you know, impression of this cloud texture right in the lamp. But the rest of it, you know, I don't need to protect it too much, okay? All right, so I have some of this showing down here and some of my lighthouse showing because it, like I said, it is a ridge. And I'll stamp out my clouds like so. A little bit more pressure around the mask, okay? And down here too. Okay? Just that cloud like that. Ink it up again. Blot it off around the perimeter. Really good. Okay. Now I take this and I'll just kind of change the angle slightly. And I'm overlapping my previous cloud enough, okay? I'm not overlapping by 5 inches or something like that. Well, it's not even a 5-inch stamp, but I'm not overlapping by, you know, an inch. I'm probably overlapping by about a ½ inch to a ¼ inch. So, I mean, that's a big space, you know. You don't have to take a stamp positioner and measure that out, okay? Now see this right here? To make it look like light is coming from within these clouds, the light is kind of coming from the top side of these billows. It's top lit. So I'm just changing the angle of this every time I stamp it like this, okay? So see, now the light is coming from in here because all these clouds are being top lit. If I have a cloud over here, I'm not doing it like this, unless the lighting is coming from over here. Lighting is coming from right in here. I turn this like this, so it's 1, 2, 3, and 4, like that, okay? Let's mask off that lamp. Okay, ink, wipe. Just, you know which side you're wiping. It's the top side of the billows here in this case. Okay, and we'll go like this. See, this one was like this. And see, I'm coming up here. I don't want to go too much like a 90-degree angle. It's like, you know, setting bricks or something. But you can go with any, anything up to and as close to that 90-degree as you want. See, like that? Okay. Now I have this area on the other side. What I'll do is I'll just ink it up and go this way. Okay. Now this one I didn't really need to wipe off because it's going right into the lighthouse. See that? This is your mask, okay? A lot of times when people say make it look easy, it's because they're used to doing things much more kind of involved. You know, it's stamping out the image, cutting it out exactly, okay? Which has to be done for outline designs, okay? I'm not saying that's not a, a fantastic process, but it's not needed in this type of, stamping. Okay, so we have this area of light in here. I'd like a little bit of that closed off, I think. Let's see if I can get a little bit of cloud there. Okay, so we'll have this little bit of light coming down here, like so. Let's do something right here. Let's create I've been wanting to do kind of a beachside scene with some fences, and I thought I would use my new fence stamps for that, okay? Now, again, stamps have been designed to be used in entirety, but also in partials, so I don't have, a big space for this big stamp, in here, but I can use the top of it like this, okay? And just a little portion of it. So we use portions of stamps for what we want. We make them really serve us from a usage standpoint to really maximize what they can do and the value of, our hard-earned money spent, okay? It's the same thing for me. When I'm drawing my stamps, I want to be able to make a really good visual statement in my designs, and I want them to be able to be used as universally as possible, or just in multiple ways to really maximize the time it takes for me to draw a design, okay? I don't want to spend hours and hours and hours like I do, sometimes weeks, sometimes even months on a design, that can be used one way. Ideally, I'll spend all that time and it can be used in unlimited amount of ways. Okay, so on something like this, I'm going to make this opening right here. It's like a gated, you know, not gated, but just a kind of a fenced opening, kind of going down to the shoreline maybe, like this, okay? And that's just using a small little portion of it. So here we are in the foreground. And I'll tell you what, let's use these little characters. I think this is kind of a romantic type of notion here. A couple down at the beach, going out into the water, holding hands. You know. And we'll put them about like so. I don't know what these are. They're not. I wouldn't call these characters foreground or something like that, but I don't know. They kind of are. I guess that could be the focal point, you know. Foundation, filler, foreground, focal point. Okay. Remember your F's. I'm just joking. I just made that up recently, but I thought that could be a way to remember this. Okay, here's some additional grass. You know, kind of, you know, beachside grass next to the fence. Okay. So that kind of, you know, it's like we went down to the beach or something. I would have liked to have a little bit more fence, but I think that looks pretty good. Here. This is a beachside, you know, type of scenario here. Here's a flock here. Let me show you a little trick on this one too. On the small birds, you kind of around, you know, on the perimeter or something like that, just kind of wipe them off a little bit so they stamp out lighter. And then there's some darker gull, you know, flock gulls in there. And I'll do them, we'll stamp out our smallest little thing in multiple values, creating some depth within that, you know, space. It's not, they're not totally lighter or something like that, but it's little details like that. See, these ones are darker. Now, these ones are smaller too, but they're also a little bit more gray. So it looks like they're farther back in the distance, even in the smallest of details like that. Okay? So there's our scene. And what I would do is I would, you know, tone in here with some blues or whatnot. Make us a little bit of stronger vignette around here if you want to do some kind of sandy looking, you know, brown, warm tones down here for the shoreline. You can do that. But that's all set and ready to go. Okay. Now let's see. Let's go with a grassy kind of open terrain area. Okay. And I'll show you something with the sedge filler. Okay, that's a really good filler stamp for your filler needs. Okay, all right. Have I done everything kind of landscape so far? No, this one is portrait. Okay, portrait, you know, I mean, kind of vertical like that. Okay, cabin with fence. Oh, maybe I'll use, I don't know if I use the other fence, maybe. Okay, see, I'm not stamping the whole thing. I'm kind of having it off the page so that the cabin is on the left side of the page, kind of looking into the scene, like that. And let's do some filler right now, okay? So, filler grass in here. Now we'll put in some other things in here, but let's just kind of fill in with this filler grass. Maybe I'll kind of make things a little bit more interesting. Let's see if I have it here. If I have my larger grass texture stamp. I had it. Okay, here it is. It's not somewhere. It's right behind my cloud stamp. But here's a larger grass texture right here. Okay. That I'll put down here, kind of more towards the base. And let's just fill in right here. I go right into that texture with the sedge filler, okay? light, even pressure with the sedge filler. You know, don't rock it like this and get kind of an impression like that where it's super strong on the outside. But see these little, you know, little hills and things like that are in there. Let's go ahead and use some additional trees. It's like missing something in the background right there, right? It'd be great for a quote. I should be leaving some areas for some quote stamps or something like that in here. This would look good in green or something like that, but just to keep things simple, let's go with the black here. And I tell you what, these trees, let me see if I can get the right amount of gray. Sometimes it just depends how wet your pad is. Sometimes I wipe that, you know, I stamp it off and I go for the second impression. The second impression is as dark as the first one. But I'll take off a pretty good amount of it down here. Okay. And we don't need to mask off solid imagery. We're just masking off our cabin because this cabin is, you know, light and white. But let's put some background trees in here. Background trees, you know, they're like a filler stamp too, right? So there's one impression back there. Okay. Blot. Wipe. And I'll mask off that far hill in the distance like that. Get another tree in here. Now I'm not going into my cabin right there. I got pretty close, okay? But do you see that right in there? Those background trees. They look a little bit more distant. This one should have been a little bit lighter so that it doesn't merge with that one visually as much. But see that filler stamp in there? Okay, now let's go for some foreground. When you have trees like this in a scene, it's often good to bring in additional tree forms of that similar type in the foreground just to create kind of a repetition of shape, okay, an object. This is the rocks, pines and rocks stamp, or the individual pine can be stamped in here. You know, you just do it multiple times. But here, I won't use the whole thing because this will be going right up in that cabin. So I'm just going like this, and it's about, what would you say, 2/3 of the way down. I don't have any of those rocks being used from the stamp in this impression. I'm just using it for these trees. Okay, like that. And you maybe go again right over here or something like this, okay? So hopefully the way that I've designed these stamps too, when you use things in repetition, it doesn't look so monotonous, like, oh my god, there's that same tree stamp used, you know, 20 times or something like that, or, you know, 3 times, 5 times. It should look similar enough to blend in, but not so similar where it's just obvious, you know, that it's the same thing used over and over again. So one of the things I did too was I stamped this one a little bit higher up than this one, you know, if that would matter at all. So there's your foreground, and with a repetition of form, just larger versions of it, then in the background like that. But see this? This is kind of midground right here. That's background. You have the same shapes in each area. You don't always do that, but it's a good way to create visual continuity, which kind of lends itself to visual harmony within an area. You can do that with shapes, you can do that with color patterns, etc. You know, like you know, someone getting dressed, you know, they might match, you know, whatever their accessories, their shoes with, you know, the bag that they're carrying or something like that, or, you know, something with, you know, their clothes, or a, you know, interior designer will have, you know, some sort of repetition of color, or, you know, contrasting textures for variety, but, you know, some similar colors somewhere. Okay, so that is that. Let's do a little deer in here just for kicks. Okay. Now, this deer here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to wipe off its feet, or you can mask off and then stamp it without those areas of the feet. Because this is grass down here, so I want it to be standing in my grass, so I wiped off the feet. I don't have to wipe it off completely, but it kind of obscures the base of them like that. So it's standing in the grass now. If it was standing on concrete or something like it on, you know, solid dirt, then I wouldn't wipe it off. But it's one of those subtle little things like that. See those feet right here? But see how that kind of just goes right into that grass there, and it's a little bit more obscured. Okay, so let's do some things with, more sky, okay? Let's do, oh, let's do a, Milky Way scene, okay? Not every scenic stamping is going to have land elements and stuff like that. You can do like what we call skyscapes or something like that, okay, in a scene. And the focal point is, or clouds could be your focal point, okay? It's just how something is used. All right, so let's do that. You saw me use this cloud here. Let's just only use this cloud in this one. And let's go for a little bit of variety. So let's see. Let's go with this blue. I'm thinking about using it in multiple blues here. Let's go with something like this, a little bit of a darker blue and a lighter blue like this, okay? Okay, now what I'm going to do is every time I ink this, I'm going to wipe it off a little bit on the top side of this, okay? I'll make some darker impression clouds around the perimeter, okay? And then we'll have some lighter ones on the interior, so it looks like the light is coming from within and opening the clouds. And in that space, they'll be lighter, okay? Now, we don't have to always wipe this off, but I think it does lend itself to a kind of a more graceful looking application of this cloud stamp, okay? So you'll benefit from it, more later on, especially if we add additional tones into this. Okay. Let's make it a little bit more obscure. Not obscure, but non-symmetrical. Okay, so over here, see I have more of the cloud. I'll just go with a little bit of it right here. Okay, let's do that. Let's do that. I don't have to go around the entire perimeter. Do you see how I was, with each impression, I'm changing the angle a bit? Okay, now if I was to do this one up here, I'd go like that. Okay, but I'm leaving that area open right there because I want to be able to use more or a different color, a different value of blue. Okay, let me just wipe this off like so. I don't have to take off all that blue ink, okay? Yeah, it was holding a lot of it because there's a lot of little gaps in here. But now let's use a lighter version of blue. Now if you're doing this in a sunset type of scheme, then maybe use, I don't know, brown and orange or red and orange or something like that. It would look super hot in terms of the intensity, but then you can just blend in some other colors like that. Okay, so here's this cloud right here. Okay, now it's going to be kind of going into the light on one side, but it's also blending into the other cloud that's already down here on the other. You could mask that off. You don't really need to, because what I've done is I've wiped it off here where it's going to be going into that, and plus this blue is really light in value, so I don't think I really need to wipe it off, okay? Because it should just blend in with this other cloud out here, okay? This is a really good filler stamp in terms of any sky. If you have space around a moon or something like that, you can just fill it in with these clouds right here, and it fills right in, okay? Let me just go with a second impression right in here, okay? All right. See that right there? Darker, lighter. I could have done it all in the same color if I wanted to, but just having that lighter value in there doesn't look like it's, there's a stronger sense of lighting in here. Okay, but that is, the clouds in one scene are kind of more of a filler stamp. I mean, they're playing a significant role in terms of the visuals of this piece, but on here, it's really the foundation, okay? It's kind of the focal point, we don't really need filler in here. The filler could be, some additional colors that we bring in here or something of that sort. But let's go in here now, and let's bring in some foreground. I like playing around with when I have something as light and billowy as this, I like to have kind of some big solid imagery to kind of contrast against that. So let's do this like this. I'm trying to decide on a composition. I don't know what side's up and which side's down. When I get this, I kind of decide, okay, this one doesn't look like that. This could be the lower area and this could be the higher area. I think it looks okay here too. Kind of light's going off that way. This light's kind of going up and out like that. I like that one, I think. I don't know. Gut instinct. Okay, now on this one right here, what I'm going to do, you can put some trees just vertical like this, okay? Or if you want it to look like you're kind of lying on the grass or something like that and looking up, then what you do is you tilt your imagery in with a common vanishing point, okay? So you would just twirl these around accordingly, and it looks like you're looking up into the heavens or something like that, into the sky, okay? Let's do it that way, okay? So, now what I'm going to do, okay, just what I'm going to do is I'm going to, there's a couple specks of dust on here, actually. Let me see if my camera can pick it up. It's right there. It's a little dark speck, okay? It's really tiny. I was going to put a little dot in there, but I'll just go with that one right there. Okay, so this is like a line right here. I'm going to point it right at that little speck. Now, I'm not going to use, a large portion of this tree, but I might use it multiple times, okay? So see how that's aiming right there? I don't know if you can see it, but... And, kind of vary the spacing of this. You can go with a couple impressions to, close together, but I wouldn't, do it perfectly spaced apart. When that happens, it tends to look a little bit too much like a clock face or something like that. Okay, see how I put two of those together just so it doesn't look like the same tree, just done over and over and over again. Okay, see that right there? It's like we're looking up and, into the sky like that. But now let's contrast it a little bit more. Let's go ahead and use that same leafless pine stamp that... Did I use that? Yes, I used it on this one right here. Okay. All right. We'll point that right at that vanishing point. Let's see. Here, or maybe over here. Let's go like this. Let's use a pretty significant portion of it. I'm going to have to ink up a little bit more. Okay, let's go right over here, like so. I'm overlapping, one tree a little bit. And let's go with one more. And I'll go with it kind of, a little bit more lower than the previous one. It's not reaching in quite as far, but see that, like that? So you get some variation. I can go for another one over here, but I don't think so. I think that's, I don't know. Maybe it could use another little stamp out there to the side. I think I'm going to leave it like that because I'm thinking I might want to use some sort of quote stamp in here, like in here. This could be up and down like that, up and down. This still could be up and down too. If this was up and down, I'd probably put another tree right here just to balance things off a little bit more. But if that's the top up there, I think this is good. Let me see if I can find a kind of a suitable quote stamp. I know I have some quotes on clouds and things like that, but let's take... Okay, I found one. Aristotle. In all things of nature, there is something of the marvelous. Let's see if I can get this quote stamp on here, nice and straight. I just try to go as straight as I can. If it's a little bit angled, crooked, whatever, I just say, so be it. Okay, so let's go with this in here. I'm going to put it in mostly the lighter clouds, okay? So there's not too much contrast between it, or there's more contrast between the quote stamp and the background, okay? It's not perfectly, straight, but it's straight enough for me. If it's not straight enough for the recipient of this card, that's not too good. See, if you're giving away your stuff, you say, if you get kind of mistakes on your pieces, I don't know if I'd call it a mistake, but what you say is, hey, this card's not, the card that you're making isn't for me anyway, so what do I care? I'm just joking. Okay, so let's go with, so that was kind of foundation, foreground. I don't know, the quote stamp, I don't know. They're their own thing. I'm trying to think, does that quote look, it is kind of forward. Well, let's put some birds in here, okay? That? See, like that? Isn't that fun? You can do too, it's really fun, is I have these photographs of clouds and skies, and you can just stamp the trees and the quote right over the photograph, and some birds, and that makes for a complete statement too. So you can just bypass all the cloud stamping too, and on that photo stamp, I should stamp on some photo stamps for this video right here. I forgot all about that. But that would talk about a quick card. Let's do that. In fact, let me pause my video and go grab a. No, I don't need to pause. I just have a pack of clouds right here, okay? Now these clouds, in all my videos, if I didn't mention it, there's links to whatever I use, if it's available out there, okay? I just link to it in my description area. So you just click on Show More underneath all the videos, and it lists everything that's used practically. Now, sometimes I don't link to something if I don't find the prices out there for a certain thing to my liking, like on the Amazon links or something like that. Okay, let me see. I haven't done this with the, I don't know if I've done this cloud with my trees yet. I might have. If I did, I don't remember. Okay, so I need to establish kind of a vanishing point. Let's go with the vanishing point right here. I put a little dot there. So all of my tree stamps will be kind of aiming at that little dot right there, okay? I won't do the exact composition. No, this is just dye-based inks on photo paper, okay? It stamps out just fine on there, usually. Okay, so tree like that, go up like this. Over there. I don't know, I guess you can call the photograph kind of the foundation, right? Because it's established texture, pattern, I don't know, color, time of day, etc. All right? Okay, go like that. I'm doing a different composition, but... now, these photo stamping types of things, they tend to work unless it's a really light colored background. I don't know if I would stamp like a cabin over the top of this, because the cabin or something like that would have that blue showing right through the cabin. But now these are solid, kind of more silhouette-based objects. That's why we can just stamp it right over the top of anything, because it's solid. Okay, and let's go with this tree again. So we're just doing our foreground right here, okay? We've just, we fast-tracked a scene. You can do something like that. You can have a picture of like a Milky Way, and as long as it's light enough to where the trees would show, you can stamp right over it in whatever configuration you want. Okay, and let's go with I put my quote stamp away already. Let's grab that. Okay, we can do a little comparison contrast type of thing. Maybe I'll get this one a little bit straighter this time. And maybe I'll put it on this side. Okay. I put it last time on kind of the beveled side. Okay. Let's go here. Okay. There we have that. And, oh, let's go for that little, the gulls stamp from, trying to find the quote. I've got a big pile of, here, I'll put this away later. Let me go for the gulls here. Okay. And where would I put it on this one? I see them kind of flying into that. Let me stamp that out once. Let me get a little bit of a lighter impression. Let's go like that right there. I mean, do a couple of them. I wouldn't do too many, otherwise it's like birds from Alfred Hitchcock or something like that. Yeah, maybe that'd be perfect for Halloween. Okay, so there we have that. But isn't that fun? You know what you can do too is you can put these on vellum and have this sky stamp in the background. You'd create a lot of depth between that space. And then also your quote stamp would stand out a little bit better, but I think that stands out pretty good right there. So here's your one look for it, okay? A little bit more artistic, and this one right here is, I don't know, it's pretty interesting though. But you see how that goes? Kind of, you know, our clouds and everything like that were the foundation, but you just stamp this right over the top, okay? It's kind of like another version of that aged paper look. Stamping and whatnot. Okay, should we go for one more? Okay, I haven't done a kind of a real formidable design for my new fences. I've been enjoying using that a lot. Let's do, okay, now this is what I was envisioning. Let's see, what do I want to go with the smaller ones here? Smaller. Let's do this. Let's use the larger, let's go with the smaller one over here. The larger one over here. I've been thinking about doing like a slope with like a moonrise or something like that on the horizon with these fences. I think it would be kind of interesting. It's a composition that's been kind of going through my head. Okay, so I'm going to stamp this up right here. Let's go. I need this up a little ways because I'm going to use two different sizes of fences, so I need to retain some space down here for the larger one to come in like that. I want them a little bit off center. I mean, I can do the other size, the similar size one, but just the opposite side version. But I don't know. I like using the two sizes in conjunction with one another. So I just use the opposite side in the larger form. I think I've been doing these ones. Have I been doing? No, okay. I did do some of these on quarter page cards. I was thinking, did I only do it with the larger one? I've been doing so much stamping of late. I can't even recall sometimes. Okay, so this one's a little bit lower. Like this. Okay. All right. Now I thought about this kind of grassy hill or something like that. I want to do something like that with I don't know, something walking through the grass in front of a moon or something like that. Maybe I'll use that same couple again. I'm not sure. Okay, so this is this. Now, a lot of times, what I'm doing is this has been kind of like a road, so I've been putting dirt in here, but I thought about this scenario where it's just kind of grass. Let's do that same thing with this grass in here. So it's like this is in kind of like the tall grass or something like this in the background. Okay, so let's put this. It's like a overgrown kind of area on a hill or something like that. Okay, so I'm doing that. Then we'll stamp our sedge filler in here. Okay, and let's create kind of a nice hill. Maybe I'll do a slope like this. So I'll come down like this. Okay, like that. That could be a slope, or I can make it a little bit more extreme. Let's go like that. Okay, so I'll come up here. All right, go with something like that. Or do I want to make this, let's do this here. I want to make this a little bit more distant. Okay, so I'm putting another kind of slope right here. I'll show you how I define this slope in here. Let's see, that's actually, as I'm doing this, it's kind of like revealing itself to me in terms of the visuals in here. Let's use the tree cluster again. And let's create a little bit of a separation between these slopes with the use of some trees like this, okay? See these trees right here? It'll separate one slope from from the other, okay? Like this. See that right there? And then let's create some smaller ones in the distance like that, okay? So the foundation of this, I mean, these fences, yeah, they're the foreground. I mean, I could have done this grassy texture first, and that would be the foundation, and then you just stamp your fences in after that. So, it just comes to show you. I mean, there's no set thing, okay? What I've been giving you in terms of this video, it's just kind of a rough, kind of a idea of how you can think about things, especially for the beginner. Okay, so putting those trees in there, that's kind of part of the foundation too, or it is. Now, let's stamp some moon. How do I go for this moon in the background? Eerie moon. I don't see it as eerie, but I don't know, it was just a good name for it, I guess. It could be eerie. If you stamp it out in black, any moon, it tends to look a little bit more eerie than stamping it out in like a royal blue or something of that sort. All right, let's go with Prussian blue. That's pretty dark blue. Go with this one. Let's go with this. I'm going to go kind of dark on this one. Prussian blue is a really rich, very dark blue. It's one of the darker blues out there on the market, and super rich because it's Marvy. Okay, so I'm going to blot off the surrounding area in here. Okay. Go like this. Right in here. I mean, I don't know if the moon, is it a filler stamp? Well, it certainly is filling in the sky. You know what I mean? It's more of an active player, though, in terms of just filler. Like, I see the sedge filler is filler. That's why it's called that, But, I don't know. You could stamp the moon first in terms of a process, but I just find it's easier just to work the moon around it. Like I could have, if there was only a small portion of the sky up there, then you mask off the meadow and you stamp that in there. You see what I mean? So that's kind of easier to do than to work everything else around the moon, in my opinion. Although it's easy to do that too. It's just a little bit easier. Okay, now see what I've done here. I just use the texture right here. I stamp this out like this, okay? And then I use this portion to fill in that extra area out there, okay? And then you're going to fill in with some more, tone in here or whatnot. I'm not sure what I want here in the distance. Oh, I think I know. Let me see if I still have it out. Where is that? Yeah. Where's my little horse stamp? I just used it the other day. Here you are. Okay, here's this little horse right. I'm going to put that right there. And that horse is kind of, be in the moonlight. Okay, now remember this horse is standing in grass. This particular horse likes to eat by moonlight. What can I say? Okay, so here's our focal point. I don't know what the focal point in here would be. I guess it would be the horse. It could be the moon, too. All right. So there's our horse in the background like that. And what I'm doing, when I end up coloring this, it'll be kind of illuminated right in here with the moon, the source of light, and the reflected light down here. And I'll put some shadows on these trees and whatnot, I usually like to leave my kind of opening in here a little bit lighter, as a visual entry point into the scene. But foundation here's some additional foreground I think could look good in here too. So see this, this exercise is working for me too. When I think about, foreground. This is all grass in here, but let's put some taller grass here in the foreground, okay? I'll leave an opening, though, a visual opening here. See that grass right there? Doesn't that kind of anchor the base in here and also kind of points into the scene? But it also provides something that's a lot closer to us now, relatively speaking, to increase our depth of field within the space. So foundation, filler stamps like that, okay? And then in foreground, here's the filler in there too, and then focal point right there. I did them, some out of order or whatnot, but like I said, it's just kind of a rough idea on, kind of different ways to think about your approach of your compositional builds, okay? And don't forget, things like word stamps or quote stamps or something like that. A lot of us like to use those types of things, In one of our skies, you might, a lot of people do happy, birthday scenes, so you would leave a space, for that happy birthday in there. And that would be, kind of like a focal point or, filler stamp, whatever you want to think about it as. Could be a foundation stamp. It's something that certainly gets a high degree of attention. Okay, so let's take a look here at our different compositions, and let's talk about kind of that whole process again, okay? So let's go in reverse again. So foundation right up here. Foreground is, the fences are kind of a foundation, I would say. The foreground is the reeds, the taller grass down here, and the filler is certainly the sedge filler. And, I don't know, we filled in that sky with the eerie moon. Right here, foundation is already established, just like in this piece, okay? Our color scheme and whatnot. So we've stamped out our main image right in here. Filler stamps on the side, foreground, and the lower area. Focal point, okay? And with some filler stamps are those trees in the background as well. This one, it's all happening in the foreground like that. And we have our quote stamp right here. But we do have some depth in here. There's those birds back there in the distance, okay? Same thing with this one right here, except we just stamped all of our clouds. With this, when you're starting off you can do, this would be fantastic with a sunset type of sky in the background. It's just a matter if it's a sunset. I don't know if something like a quote stamp stands out against it, but you could, stamp this a quote or something on a separate piece of paper, mat it, and then place it right over the top of the photograph, so it's against white, so it can be readable. You know what I mean? Something like this. Main stamps right here, Snowy Brook, and the chapel. And then the filler stamps are like these additional trees that fill out this space, the snowy textures in here, okay? So filler stamps. Foreground like that kind of rounds out the composition with the extra depth and larger objects in the foreground like that. It frames these objects like this. You notice how I kind of focus things on the left and right corners like that? This is left and right corner, but there's an opening in here. I didn't fill in this whole space. There's always a space in here for me to enter the scene, okay? So left and right corners like that, but it frames things off, but it gives you that depth. I wouldn't say 100% of the scenes I do are like that, but a lot of them are. Here's a left and right corner right here with the opening down the center. This one's very apparent, okay? But foundational pieces, Seaside Cove, small, and the lighthouse. And then we filled in that space around up there, okay, with the clouds. Now say I couldn't stamp those clouds first and then stamp the ocean down here because the clouds would be all in the ocean, right? So that's why we stamped this first, because in this case we masked those objects off to put those clouds in the distance. It looks real three-dimensional that way, doesn't it? Just doing some minimal masking. I do have a little bit of a white halo around that, but that's not really... Now, if I had like a 1-inch halo, that wouldn't be good. But then if you get that, big space in between there, just take the cloud, mask off a little bit less, and then stamp it again. And see if you can get closer to your lighthouse and put a little bit more pressure around your masks when you're using them, especially with the areas and scenes that have a sharp edge to it, just a straight line, okay? Foundation stamp, the cabin. Filler, sedge filler around it, plus some additional trees in the background. Foreground, like that. Focal point. Bayou house. Cypress trees, because they're really big, okay? They're kind of foreground, I know, but I don't know, they're filling in the space around this too, you can say. Filler stamps in the background, the same tree, stamped, pretty strong, straightforward black. Wiped off a little on the bottom, but I think that was the second impression. That was the third impression. Dark, medium, light, for 3 different depths of that cypress small, cluster small. Foreground images in here. See that one? You can create variation. It doesn't have to mean everything close is dark, everything back is light. Okay, this one right here, that was my second impression, but that's just to give a little bit of variety in here. It puts a different light on that foreground space as it goes dark, light, dark right there, okay? But foreground in here, foreground up top there. Foreground doesn't always have to be on the base. You can have overhanging tree limbs or something of that sort. Okay, so anyways, what do we do here? We have 2, 4, 6, 8. 8 scenarios here. Different compositions right here, okay? Kind of all approached in a similar fashion, There's variations, certainly, okay? And this isn't the only way to work either, okay? I've been doing things like on vellum. I've been playing around with things like foils, okay? So there's different things we would do on those types of surfaces when approaching them, okay? I'll get to something like that, and I'll show you the variations for those kind of unconventional stamping surfaces and how to approach those, because there's, like one extra kind of layer of, I don't know, whatever, the application of that medium that will come into play on, a dark surface, here, let me grab a piece right here, stamping on this is going to be a little bit different than this, because if I stamp in these objects dark on dark like that, you won't even be able to see them. So I'll show you how to play around with that if you haven't watched any of the foil pieces yet. But anyways, okay, so I hope this video of, uh, compositional whatever process or sequencing, compositional sequencing has come in handy for you. And like I said, you take this with a grain of salt in some ways, but it's a pretty good way to kind of think about things because a lot of times when people see something like this in a finished piece, if they haven't done scenic stamping before, they don't know. Did you stamp the moon first? Is this whole area down here one stamp? They don't know that, okay? If you haven't seen these before, maybe you haven't, okay? But now you can kind of see how they're kind of built, okay? And one of the things I do for all my stamps too, I want things to be fairly specific. Like, I don't want this to be one stamp right here because then you can't do any variation with it. It has to be stamped that way. So I try to make things specific enough, you know, in terms of an object, you know, but I put those trees behind there so we don't have to do careful masking around that cabin. You know, I just have to put a little paper towel over the top of that, but not over that. Okay, so that's why I design certain things a certain way. So I want them specific enough, but I want them general enough so you can use them in multiple ways because that's going to give you variety and it opens the doors for more compositional creativity when you start utilizing your stamps. You know, you can use them in a lot of different ways. And that all comes into play. So, have any questions, drop me a note in the comment section. These right in here are just stamp sketches, but these are going to provide me now some different cards to work on and to do some finishing up. Some of them will require more than others. Like the photo stamping piece, I can't think of anything I would do on that. Maybe a little bit of white pigment ink. I like using some of that to bring in some additional texture and light into these objects. But, you know, a lot of these things like this, they're almost done. Same thing with something like this, you know, things where we have an established color scheme or lighting scheme in this case going on in the background. Okay? All right, so anyways, if you've made it this far in the video, congratulations. I would give you a medal for bearing with me and whatnot in these very dry delivery videos and whatnot, but I always thank you for spending some time with me and sharing your time with me and sitting in on these Stampscapes videos. Okay, so until the next video or specific scene, I think I don't know. I want to finish these all off. I think I really want to get to this one though, and do this moonlight kind of a hillside scenario. I don't know. We'll see. Okay.